our marching orders from the state. If there's new education legislation that is appropriate for all public and private schools, we're sort of the go-betweens to help districts make sure that they come on board with whatever the latest legislation is. And one of the most recent legislations that have been passed is the anti-harassment, intimidation, and bullying law that goes into effect August 1st of this year. And so we will be covering that a little bit. But also what the ESD does is we provide additional services to school districts that wouldn't normally have them, particularly in the small rural school districts. So for example, if your school district is so small that you can't afford to have a counselor or a special education person on board, you can have a small contract with the ESD and we can send out an itinerant person to provide those additional services. And what I do with the ESD is I manage 4 different grants, 2 federal 21st Century Community Learning Center grants, which are after school and before school services for kids that are high risk. And those are in 8 different school districts. And then I manage a federal anti-bullying grant in Stevens County that we are implementing a project into 5 school districts in Stevens County. And then the state bullying grant, which has to do with the new bully legislation, which covers all of our service area, which is 59 school districts and 69 public school districts and about 74 private schools in eastern Washington. But what I need to know, and I tend to do things a little proactive. First of all, I have distinguished guests here this morning that I'm very happy to have. And on the bottom far right is my mother, Mart, and she's up visiting from Portland, Oregon. And next to her is Corinne and Harvey Pauly. They are my in-laws, and they are from here in Spokane, but they had worked for about 30 years in Central Africa, and they're back retired, and so we're really glad that they're here. And then I have my best friend and my work comrade from Saudi Arabia, Annie Grunder. We work together there, and it's kind of poignant with what's happening right now because Annie was teaching in Kuwait and was on summer break when the invasion happened 12 years ago, and she lost all of her personal belongings. And after that Kuwait experience, you'd think she'd have enough of the Middle East, but oh no. And she took a job in Saudi Arabia, and that's where I met her. But she has now relocated here to Spokane as well. So, here we go. Does this want me to turn off the light? Okay. I think it's the middle one. All right, great. It may be kind of hokey, but here we go. This isn't a traditional lecture class. I don't know what you're all used to. But I need to know who you are and what you're studying if you are in college, or where you're working if you're working, and just what's one thing that you'd like to get out of this workshop this morning. And where can I start to put on the spot? I'll start back here.
My name is Vicki Scuderi. I'm a mom. I'm here to get some information for our school.
And what school is that?
Ponderosa Elementary.
Okay, welcome.
My name is Diane Bouvet, and my child's also at Ponderosa Elementary. So we decided we'd bring back lots of good information for our principal.
Neil McElmurray, and I'm a
Neil?
and I'm an early childhood major, and my aunt brought me.
It's a spring break.
Good, make you get up in the morning. Huh? What year are you?
This is my second.
Great. Well,
I'm Sally Holtz, and I teach 6th grade at Post Falls Middle School. And I would like to just gain some tools to help kids deal with bullying and be able to identify it.
thank you.
My name is Abigail Osborne. I'm a graduate student at UW. I just wanted to come today because, well, first of all, I'm getting college credit for it. And another thing is that I just don't know a lot about schools and bullying, and so I just want to get some information to help me with that.
My name is Danica Allen, and I teach high school English at Deer Park High School. It's about kind of 1 month of here. And we're a pretty small district, and sometimes a little bit behind the times, but I think I should clean it up. This is my second year teaching them, so my second year there. I think they hired me because I'm kind of one of those people who likes to stir things up a little bit around diversity issues. And so I'm starting to do that and trying to get some more tools to do that. I've become part of a equity task force, I think is what we're going to call ourselves. So we're working with the HIV law and working hard to implement proactive strategies rather than just punitive consequences for kids.
This is a great place to be then. Deer Park is one of my districts, one of my sites for the Arcadia for the middle school.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm Pamela Ramos, and I am an adjunct at Gonzaga University. I teach in Calgary. I'm also an adjunct at the University of Calgary, where I teach diversity counseling. I'm also a human rights educator for the Alberta Civil Liberties Research Center. And so my interest in this is I teach harassment workshops in schools. And so I teach that harassment is a form of bullying. And so I'm interested in learning more about Christy's approach to see if I can incorporate some new ideas into the workshops that I do.
Okay, my fellow afternoon presenter.
Brad Biley. I teach social studies at Lakeside High School in Plummer, Idaho, and we'll get more about it later this afternoon.
Jerry Shepherd. Oh, we heard you. Thanks. Okay, we'll go right down here.
Rita Masita.
First name?
Rita
Uh-huh.
Masita. And I'm here with NIC to learn about this.
Welcome to you.
My name is Pat Brown. I'm going to NIC, decided to go to college after 50. Never too late. The reason I decided to come to this is I was bullied as a child, and I want to see that things change.
My name is Barb Lumber. I'm the Director of Student Support Services at NIC. And somebody had to drive the van.
Well, hopefully you'll enjoy part of it.
My name is Diana May, and I'm a student at NIC, and I'm studying to become a nurse, and someday I'd like to go on to become a surgical nurse. I'm a mother of a 6th grade son, and I guess I just want to get some good, accurate information as to how to help them when they come home and these bullying takes place, and be able to advise them correctly.
I'm Kara Cruz. I currently work as a bilingual specialist ESL tutor for District 81.
The what specialist?
Bilingual.
Okay, thank you.
And I've been working in schools for some time, and I've just had different incidences of violence and just trying to figure out how to deal with this the best way and help students advocate for themselves, I guess, to teach them.
My husband told me this story. He worked with doors, and he was talking about how all of the adults and the administration were
Doors?
yes, doors.
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 Okay.
And all of the people were talking about how to figure out how to make a bigger, stronger door for the timeout room at the high school, because the kids were busting the door down. And I'm just really intrigued about our contribution as adults to number one, be changing the way we look at how we're dealing with students in schools. And I also have a very ideal viewpoint because I'm not a teacher yet, but that's my next step. I'm going into the master's program to be a teacher to gain perspective. So I'm here to look at some of those issues surrounding the violence that's sort of embedded and overlooked at levels other than students.
Hi, and I'm Sandra Gallagher, and I work for the Spokane Head Start in this area. We're actually under the community colleges umbrella. I've been there a few years, and I've noticed that you can almost peg the kids when they walk through the door, and if I can peg them as either victim written across their forehead, then someone else can. And I'm also a foster parent and have been for 5 years. And I would just like some perspective on changing maybe victim across the forehead to to someone who would stand up for themselves.
My name is Leslie Schwartzman, and I'm a graduate of Gonzaga University. I'm a teacher up at Hamlin here in this district. I'm a special education teacher. And besides needing my last credit to extend my teaching certificate, which expires in 2 months, I work with I'm a resource room teacher, and I have an average caseload of 30 children. And though I'm not in a behavior intervention room, which is down the hall from me, I do get a lot of at-risk children and a lot of extreme behaviors in my room. And so I like taking workshops that teach me tools to help my kids. And I'm also a mother of 3 boys, and so whatever I learn in the classroom, not only or at the workshops, goes into my classroom, but I take home as well. So that's why I'm here.
My name is Diane Hart, and I teach at Lakeside High School, Plummer, Idaho, same as Brad. And I came here in particular because I knew that Brad was teaching this part of this, and his topic was interesting. And I also like to be here with some tools to deal with some of the problems that we have at school and some of the things that my son brings home as well that I'd like to help out with.
I'm Hikaru Shapiro. I'm a counselor at Lakeside Elementary School.
Hikaru? Hikaru.
And that's Plummer Wally School District. And I like to get some tools to understand more the kids who bully, and also how it affects other students like around there, and like why they start like kind of being part of it and stuff like that.
I'm Jody Shapiro, and I'm also from Lakeside. I'm the middle school counselor and district testing coordinator. And we've been working hard on bullying prevention and just hoping to get some more tips and ideas.
How about over here?
Oh, Doreen Brown. I'm with Dr. Shepard as a student, a graduate student at Gonzaga, and I teach at Rogers High School.
And Rogers is in District 81?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
For 12 and a half years, so I dealt a lot with bullying because a lot of these schools were international, so we dealt with cultural issues also, and I taught harassment in the workplace in some of my jobs. Right now I work for the Health Improvement Partnership, and we do a lot of collaborations with different organizations here in Spokane and the outlying areas.
My name is Harvey Bali. I taught in a school in Africa involving about 40 different tribes. And I ran into quite a bit of intertribal bullying. And I found quite interesting and quite difficult.
Corrine Polly. I was teaching there for Garvey Junior High, high school, and sometimes post-high school, depending on, of course, it's very, very interesting. But people are the same all over. Cultures are different.
I'm Marge. I'm his mother. I came for Noah's birthday, 12th birthday. He was born just right after.
Here we go. I'm going to stand here a lot because this is where you are, and I got to go back and forth to hit my clicker. The saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, and words will never harm me. Were you raised with that saying? I was. And as a young girl, I would be called names. I had 3 older brothers who brought all of their friends over, and I remember to this day lovely words like Zitcraft Carrier, Chunky, what were some, I can't remember some of the others, that clearly stick in my mind. Now, those of you of my age, in my first year of teaching was in 1977, so you guys can do the math. There was this commercial. I was raised in Minnesota, in a nice small town, about 350, including the farmers, where the roads were wide and the lines were narrow. And there was this commercial called Open Wide for Chunky. It was about this candy bar. So I was de-pantsed and all this stuff through my lovely memories of my older brothers and their friends. And I was this kind of person that they would call me names and it would really hurt me. And I would recite this over and over again. And I would be in tears. I remember in my mind going up to my mom saying, why are they calling me names? And she would say, well, just, remember, sticks and stones will, hurt, that whole saying. And I kept thinking that I was crazy because I would go to bed every night really feeling pain and hurt from it. And I would talk to my siblings about it, and they'd go, oh, Christy, just let it roll off. Don't worry about it. It's just words. But I was one of those people where those words really did hurt. And just a couple of days ago, my mom was visiting, and when she was here and we were talking about these workshops, she remembers when she was a young girl being bullied, and she said, I really hope, and it's really about time that we start doing something about bullying. So why has bullying become so popular lately? It's sort of the latest topic of the hour. Well, the framework I want to work with, and this is my little sort of soapbox, is that we are witnessing, I believe, a cultural change. And I'm going to use the example of in the early 70s, I believe it was around 1972, was when the laws were passed and it became illegal to beat your child, to sexually abuse your child, to emotionally abuse your child. So it wasn't until the early 70s did that law pass. That was a whole change, a whole sort of cultural evolution change in the United States. Not to say that it doesn't happen today. It doesn't happen, hopefully, as much, but it really did. It began to help kids. And then what happened about 15 years after that was the whole sexual harassment type of evolution, where it wasn't okay to sexually harass people in the workplace anymore. And it wasn't okay to sexually harass, people at school. And I was of that time when sexual harassment was still in its heyday. And yes, I know I'm older and maybe people aren't going to hit on me as much, but I know that it's different today. I feel better in the workplace. I feel better knowing young women and young men are coming into workplaces and they don't have to worry about the name calls and the hidden jokes and the looks and the glares and, hey baby, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you type of thing. It's better. It's still there, but it's a lot better. I see the same thing happening now with bullying. I think you already know why it has become such a topic of the hour, has direct correlation with the school shootings. The Columbines, the Santee, California, Moses Lake, 3/4 of all of the violent school shootings are related to bullying, where the victim turned their anger outward and then sometimes back inward and committing suicide themselves, which leads to suicide. And those of you that are, studying, I don't know where you are in your study, but the second leading cause of death for adolescents, and adolescence is 14 to 24 years old, is suicide. 100% preventable. Can you imagine 14 to 24-year-olds, and I think some of you look around that age group or maybe within that category, that's your second leading cause of death. I mean, how painful is that? And then when you're older, you get the stuff, the older people get the cancers and the heart disease, but the hopelessness that makes it for adolescents to want to commit suicide. Bullying causes kids to not feel safe at school, causes kids to be physically sick in many ways, and they stay home from school because they just don't want to come and deal with it. And I have a video that will kind of bring that point back to home. All sorts of symptoms like I don't, oh, my tummy hurts today, Mommy, I don't want to stay home. Oh, I just feel sick. And deep down, it's just that whole fear. If you're a victim, your life is just pretty much a living hell during these, supposed to be these wonderful, free school years. Bullying also causes negative school and classroom learning environments. And those of you that are in the classroom know it. You spend so much of your time trying to correct behaviors, trying to, get people to follow what your rules are, and there's just so much of that negative interaction that goes on, or maybe at recess time, which is usually just a super hot spot, hallways and restrooms. Some of these kids don't even want to go to the bathroom during the entire day because the restrooms are so scary for them to enter. And it contributes to an overall school environment, school climate rather. I'm a little nervous, I've got. Okay, the definition of bullying, there isn't any one clear definition, but there's several components to the definition of bullying. The first one is kind of an esoterical definition. It involves any written, verbal, or physical act that causes harm to your body, your mind, your soul. Okay, that's sort of, Vernon Johnson's from the Johnson Institute in Minnesota. That's sort of his sort of definition. Bullying is generally inflicted repeatedly over time at a victim. However, you can have one single bullying case that's so significant it does not need to be repeated. The two more complicated parts of bullying for it to be considered bullying is that you need to have a relationship of imbalanced power, and the last point is that there's an unequal level of affect. So in other words, you're going to have one person and the other person, whoa, man, that felt good. It's going to be an unequal affect of what they're going to show. Because the bully main goal, main fix in life is to get that reaction. And that's their hunt, so to speak. Okay, imbalanced power. This is going to require some of you to talk to me now. But don't be afraid. There's no wrong answers. But give me an example. If you were a student in elementary, middle school, high school, what would be an example of a relationship of imbalanced power? Come on. Don't be afraid.
Could you repeat those?
If I was a small kid and then the boy was a lot bigger,
Right.
he's going to have more power
Size.
physically.
Exactly. Just pure physical size. And yes, smaller kids can be a beginning target for a bully. So size is an example of a relationship of imbalanced power. What else? Yes?
Labels.
Labels.
Room.
Right. Oh no, you're one of the DLC kids, or you're one of that, or you're going to the special reading group, and it's not, everybody knows what the color means. I'm in the blue group and the green group, and the green group's the dumb group, they all figure it out, like, within a day. What else? Popularity, exactly. The more popular kid, less popular kid. Huge imbalance of power. More. New kid, absolutely. Yes, do you have all the latest and greatest stuff, or are you lucky to come to school with clean clothes on?
Sexual orientation.
Sexual orientation, and just gender in general. Grade level. Cultural background. Jerry? Color. Okay. Those are all examples of relationships of imbalanced power, and what is need to take place for it to be considered bullying versus just what we call normal conflict between people. These are some examples, and it's not an exhaustive list, and I'm not a bully expert. I'm sort of like the bringer of the information or whatever like that. But everybody who is a so-called expert, they have their own words, and I have 3 different examples for you. Taunting, name-calling, slurs, gestures, exclusion. The girls have the market on this kind of stuff here. And the thing with written is this can be really deadly, and as more people have access to the internet, this through electronic means is really becoming a way to go. There was a high school in the Midwest where there was a girl that the popular girls decided to make a website about this girl, unbeknownst to her, and people would add to it every day. They weren't even true comments. They were just making up everything in the world about this girl, and can you imagine that girl's horror when she discovered that this website existed about her? She tried to commit suicide 2 times, and I have not heard yet what her fate is to date. Bullying is a form of violence. And to imagine what kids are doing on the playground to each other, hitting, kicking, spitting, name-calling, would we allow that in a workplace as an adult? Think about it. No. Okay. So it is a part of violence. It is a form of violence, and it's on the violence continuum. This is just an example of a violence continuum. I think on the blue sheet, this is another version. This is a very exhaustive list, and it has all sorts of great names. I kind of just lump everything together, but this here comes from a group of folks called Bully Proofing Your Schools. Their resource and their web addresses I have on the back of the PowerPoint presentation. They really have excellent books. They have an elementary book that you can buy one book and use for your entire school for $42.50. Not that I'm promoting it. Okay, so we have a little activity here, and Annie is going to pass out some highlighters, and I would like to encourage, at least in pairs, just take one of the sheets, take a highlighter, and between 2 of you, highlight the stuff that you have actually seen around you, and what you have reliable information that you have seen. As an adult and as a student, if you work in a school, what have you seen in your school, or throughout your lifetime, what have you seen? Okay, can you do that real quick? Take about 3 minutes. Partner up. This gives you a chance to move around just a little bit. You can be in threes if you want. You guys, it gives me a chance to get some water. All right. Now this, why don't you go ahead and just say what you said to me, that if you haven't actually seen it.
As we were talking and going through it, one of the things that came to mind was maybe we haven't actually seen it, and actually there were just a few that we thought we knew that it did happen, even though we didn't see it. So
And that
the
would
majority
be,
of those.
right, definitely the majority. And I think it's not only do you see these things or have, and what I mean by reliable information is there's a difference between your principal informing you that there was an incident of catching students drinking or using drugs, or catching students in the bathroom, engage, whatever it is. That would be considered reliable information, all right, versus, oh, did you hear, that type of a thing. I was going to make some great point, and I sort of forgot what it was.
It's rampant.
Pardon?
These issues are rampant.
They are rampant. They are. And there was something else to that, and maybe it'll come to me. Hold on. Let's see if it comes. All right, here is an example between what we talk about normal conflict versus bullying behavior. And how do you know the difference when kids are walking down the hall, shoving each other against the lockers? How do you would know the difference if that is a bullying incident or if that's just normal conflict or rough and tough teasing and play? It is hard to know. It's not an easy thing. That's why I never blame teachers or paraeducators or parent volunteers, why haven't you caught this problem before? It is hard, and we need to sort of start learning some of the signs of the difference. And basically what it is, there are some critical differences. Are both kids crying? Or is one crying and the other one not? That's a real clue there. Those are some of the easier, more black and white indicators to decide. Now, there are a lot of bullies that will act like victims, and they'll make you think that they're the victim. But in general, we're looking for that different emotional affect. Is there efforts to resolve or no effort? If you have fighting between friends, and all of a sudden they realize, boy, even as a 6th grader, when my son has some of the disagreements or fights with his buddies, I really encourage him that it's not the end of that friendship. You just don't want to lose it over something like that because they spent some time investing into that. Oh. There's not ever an easy way to go back to previous. Okay, is that the first one? Okay. What's the difference, or I say to tease or not to tease? Are we saying that we don't want normal teasing or natural teasing to happen? No. I mean, that is a developmental phase. It's a chance for kids to experiment with types of humor and ways to help other kids relax. But there is a difference between, teasing can turn into bullying. And I'll use an example of Annie. Annie and I, let's say we have a relationship of balanced power. We're both educators. Let's say we both work for the same agency. We have the same, higher ed degrees. We've been, similar jobs. Everything that you can imagine would think that we are of equal power. There isn't anything to say we're not. Okay, so, all of a sudden, for whatever reasons, there's not any secret bullet of reasons why people engage in bullying behaviors, except for they want to get a fix. But okay, so I start saying to Annie, man, another sweater, where on earth did you get that? And she goes, oh, well, And then the next time I see her, oh, the sweater girl, boy, Annie. See her again, and I kind of keep going on this sweater mode. Well, let's say all of a sudden, she used to feel really cool about her sweaters and really liked them and chose them carefully. And now she's like thinking, man, is this really kind of hokey? Or let's say I'm walking down the hall and she sees me and all of a sudden she goes, oh, God, Christy's going to say something about my sweater. And let's say it goes on a little bit further and she sees me walk down the hall and she doesn't even want to see me and she just finds an excuse to turn around and go the other way. That relationship has changed. That natural teasing has now turned into bullying, and our relationship now has become of imbalanced power. And that can happen, and that does happen a lot. So what's the difference between friendly teasing and hurtful teasing? And this is some of the ideas that as information gets passed on to you folks, this needs to get passed on to students and to parents that, again, do you have that equal power, or is that popular student, teasing that other, less popular student? Is it a neutral topic or a sensitive topic? Somebody may be really sensitive about their eyes, or sensitive about their braces, or sensitive about their big tummies, or whatever that it is. So if you know that, don't tease them about it. It's pretty simple. Is it to include that person or to exclude? Are you being funny or are you being sarcastic? Sarcasm will cut you with a knife. Very few people can use sarcasm well. So what's the difference? Then we have this other area of tattling versus telling. You know, you're teasing someone. Oh, Miss So-and-so, you should have seen what Billy just did to Janie. You know, rah, 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 rah. I bet you some of you hear that about 100 times a day. The main difference is this rule, and that is you say to that student, or in somewhat apply to that student, so are you telling me this because you want to help this person, or are you telling me this because you want to get that person in trouble? And that really helps make it black and white for kids. You do have a handout, I can't remember what color it is, on teasing and tattling as well. But again, you can draw some black and white comparisons. Can anybody tell me what color it is? It's kind of the salmon color one. You can have that. That's just an extra handout. But again, is it accidental behavior or is it purposeful? You know, it's just, you just ask yourself those same questions. All right, we're going to talk about some trends, and then we're going to work on that myth sheet for the next couple of minutes. It is true that boys are exposed to more bullying than girls as a gender. Now, there is disagreement among some of the bullying experts. For example, the authors of Queen Bee's Wannabes and Odd Girl Out, you know, they present a case that girls or the girl bullying is becoming more, as far as in ratio, it's a higher amount than what it is with boys. The longitudinal studies from the Johnson Institute and from Dr. Oveas, who is one of the big bully gurus, suggest just the opposite, that it's just getting more attention in the media now than what it ever has been before. I'm not here to convince you either way. But in this next 10 minutes or so, I am going to ask you to kind of keep your minds open about what you came in here thinking about bullies and victims, or people who engage in bullying behaviors. Boys use more direct bullying, physical stuff. Girls are more indirect, the social isolation, the shunning, there's another story that there was this unpopular girl. The popular girls say to the unpopular girl, this is a true story, I don't know where it was, that, hey, why don't you have a birthday party, we'll all come over. This girl was so excited. Her mom was so happy that all these girls were coming over, decorated the house, did the whole thing, bought stuff, food, you know, all that stuff. They didn't show up. It was all a part of the plan. Deadly. Deadly for that particular girl. Okay. In general, teachers do relatively little. And this is longitudinal study over and over again. Even the surveys that I did in Stevens County, from the student's perspective, we do very little. It is so meshed, and the older the people who engage in bullying behaviors get, they become more manipulative, more secretive, and the only time where kids feel the safest is in primary school, kindergarten through 2nd grade, or kindergarten through 3rd grade. After that, proportionately, bullying incidences increase to age. Peaks at middle school, levels off at high school, and declines somewhat. Think about it. If you're a primary teacher, you're teaching social skills. You're teaching how to ask for things. You're not, now Johnny, don't just take that pencil from, that person and the whole thing. That's kind of a part of the curriculum. As you get older, you have more curriculum to cover. And what do we do as teachers? We turn around like this. We're on the whiteboard, or we're working with cooperative teams over here, and then we have our backs to all the action that's happening over in this direction, which is just, total fertile ground. I mean, a school to a bully is like shooting a shotgun in a fishbowl. I mean, that's where all the kids are at. That's where the action is. It's not so much at the mall, even though it can happen, or in your neighborhood. It is primarily at school, which I just gave you one of the answers on that true false question. Okay. Parents do relatively little and are unaware that their children are either bullies or are being terribly victimized. There's tragic story after tragic story about parents not having a clue of what it is like for their child until it has been too late. And it's up to us adults to make it safe for those kids. It's not up to the kids. We have to help them be safe. Okay, students know who the bullies and victims are. I think somebody was talking about that when we came in. After the first 6 weeks of every school year, they all know who they are. They know who the bullies are. They know who the victims are. And after the first 6 weeks of the school year, teachers are lucky, if they're teaching PE, to know the 150 kids' names and that whole thing, let alone the hierarchy that has already been established. Okay, let's see what you know. Get out the bright neon yellow sheet that says breaking through the myths. Okay. We're going to take a break after this. Do you want to do an activity, or you just want to ask me some of the questions you want to most know about? I wish I was back in bed. All right. Tell you what, I won't put you on the spot. Somebody shout out a number and a question, and I'll answer it. Look it over and see just tell me what stands out to you.
4.
4. What is it?
Bullies have average grades in school.
True or false?
I'm not sure. That'd be cool.
You say false. You're very brave. I heard another person false.
My guess would be false.
Your guess would be false. The answer is true. They have average grades. There is nothing that indicates that they have low grades. And study after study after study after study after study. That's a good one.
What about 2?
What's 2?
Once a bully, always a bully.
Oh, hard question. Once a bully, always a bully.
Especially if you believe in the value of learning and education, you should be able to train. You should be able to learn.
There are 2 theories out there, and I'll just do it real quick. Yes, I am an eternal optimist, and I can never give up hope. I'm a student. Dan Alveus is from Norway, and in the middle 80s, there in Norway, I got to just frame it a little bit. Norway is about the size of the state of California, with about the population of Spokane County. Okay, and what happened was there was a series of suicides in northern Norway, and it just took the country by horror. Okay, these peaceful people, and all this kind of stuff. Well, they found out that those kids that committed suicide resulted from bullying behavior. So he was the one that really started all of the research. He has been, and his ideas have been in the United States now for about 8 years. And bully-proofing your schools, that group of people left Dan Alveus and started then their own company. And Dan Alveus, in that whole philosophy or theory, and I do have a slide on it, they believe that bullying is a learned behavior. That it's not just learned in the home, and it's not to imply that, but if the environment around them is very aggressive to, violent sort of behaviors and punitive, kinds of results. So there's that one theory. The other theory, main one out there, is again from the Johnson Institute. And those of you that are familiar with that, this also came from Minnesota. And the Johnson Institute, they have done the majority of the work on drug and alcohol addiction. Most centers like the Betty Ford Institute for rehabilitation from those addictions and diseases are based on the Johnson Institute model of recovery. And then there's another organization called Hazelton that also is out of Minnesota as well. So they have been spending a lot of their energies looking into this area of bullying and violent behavior. And they believe that 6% of the population in any school are bullies that are hardwired. In other words, it's the nature versus nurture, that they're born with those tendencies. That when you ask that question, once a bully, always a bully, they would say for that percentage, yes, but that those people can learn how to conduct their sociopathic behaviors in a more positive way. Okay? Yes. And we've got all sorts of longitudinal studies. I've got some slides on that too. All right. Then they who just engage in bullying behaviors. And that their theory, they don't know what this amount is, but that this group here can really respond to different types of intervention techniques. In fact, we're going to see a video that these kids, at least they're saying that they used to be bullies in high school and aren't bullies anymore. Okay, kind of a thing. So those are the two theories on that question. Another one, another true or false one. Shout it out, come on.
You change a bully's behavior by focusing on what's happening at home.
Can you change a bully's behavior by focusing on what's happening at home? True or false? Don't be afraid if you're wrong. Come on, we all got to laugh at ourselves.
I say true.
True. You say true.
I say neutral.
You say neutral. Oh, you sound like a
Sometimes
Swede.
yes, sometimes no.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. All right, we are saying that that is false. We want to focus on that behavior when they're at school. And if I would have framed that question, Harvey, maybe you would have thought of it different. We are not responsible. We are not wanting to change the family. We are wanting to change their behavior while they're at school. Change that inappropriate behavior to create that safe learning environment for all.
But you usually bring our parents.
Yes.
I mean, most of them.
Yeah.
But you never have to
Yeah.
much support.
But that isn't our focus. Our focus is not on the family with that. Okay, I have 9% of the population in schools are victims. Now, what's interesting is I did some work in one of the elementary schools in the Meade School District. Man, their social worker has a hard time with that. No way, we've got nice kids in our school. We only have a few that are nice, you know, and it's just, you know, as we're getting more into it with the school district, he is really beginning to come around the fact that it can look, you know, this idea, these behaviors can look so different. And with one of the videos, you can see, you're going to see how easy it is for people to just not know that it's right in front of their faces. Isn't that cool? Practice it before you paint. Another one. 3. What is it?
Bullies come from families representing all socioeconomic levels.
That's true. Bullying comes from everywhere. It's one of these non-discriminatory events. What else? There's some other ones on there that are pretty.
6.
What is it?
Fighting back against the bully will stop the behavior.
Fighting back against the bully. Well, there's a lot of parents. Man, if he hits you, hit him back twice as hard. Okay? No, it does not work. Not against the bully. If you've got two, you know those 2 football players that played for Pullman, right? And they fought over the girl.
Yeah.
All right, that worked out. That's fighting in equal power. We do not recommend it with the bully because the bully that is just, going to get that reaction. All right, another one.
Bullies are insecure and have low self-esteem.
Ha! Bullies are insecure and have low self-esteem. True or false?
False.
True. The answer is false. They have high self-esteem.
Just like the bully.
Just, yeah. They have high self-esteem. They think they're popular. They feel powerful. They want to get power that makes them feel good.
I was going to say, the kids that bully just once in a while and then feel bad about it, I think those are the kids that have low self-esteem and, put other people down and feel better. But the
Right,
kids
we
who-
have a word for those. They're actually can be a victim.
Right.
And I'll get to that slide in just a second. Go
But I
ahead.
think the kids who constantly bully, they like it. They
Yeah.
get a lot out of that.
Sure, they get way out of it, yes.
But the media sometimes portrays that the bullies are insecure and have self-esteem.
That was the old
It's very true, and that's very wrong. In fact, I got a newsletter from Meade High School that the students wrote about bullying, and one of the staff writers, a student staff writer, said, but the bottom line is bullies have low self-esteem or something like that, and I need to write them and really try to correct that. Think of a drug dealer, just a second. Think of a drug dealer. Drug dealers don't have low self-esteem. They don't care. They got that money, they're not affected by the commercials on TV that says, what about the family and what about the kids and all of that. They're like, well, not my problem, I'm just in it for the cash. They don't have that conscious. What, Andy?
I don't know if I'd really call it self-esteem, kind of arrogance, too.
Well, you can call it whatever word is appropriate, but they feel very good about themselves. All right, let's go on. These are a couple others that aren't on the sheet. Is it a big city problem? True or false? Yeah, it's everywhere. And there are some studies that show that even in the smaller rural areas, there's more bullying that goes on than in the large urban schools. And being from a small town, a couple of sayings. I used to live up in really rural Alaska. When you live in small communities, you're more familial. You'll know everybody. You almost start ragging on people like they're your siblings, and that's kind of what happens. We had a saying up in Alaska, in the summertime, everybody can see what you're doing, and in the wintertime, you leave tracks. And there is a lot of stuff that you can see more in the small rural stuff. All right, larger school or larger class sizes has nothing to do with it. I'm a proponent for small class size, but the ratio is the same that if you have a small class or if you have a large class, which I know a lot of us don't like to see. Okay, these were the two theories that we talked about. But what's nice about the two theories, the reason why I have that pep up there, because a couple of teachers really got on me one time of always saying the word bully and labeling, like bully kind of a thing. And so I said person who engages in bullying behavior, PEB. So I thought maybe I started a new acronym or something like that. But anyway, so that's what that is. That's sort of my joke. Ha ha. Okay. Both of those theories agree in these two indicators. That the underlying characteristic of the bully is a high need for power and lack of apathy for people. These are the kids that can hurt animals and they don't care. These are the kids that really don't respond to, some of the social skill training and empathy building. These are the ones that, you say, well, how can you keep, making fun of that child? Don't you see them over there in the corner crying? How would you feel? I don't feel anything, so they're the one doing it, not me. I mean, it's a different makeup. It is really, really hard and crass kind of attitude. Here's some other characteristics, which some of them we have gone over. This is the one I want to key in for those of you that are working in schools. Peer mediation, anger management are real huge social skills right now. They do not work for bullies. Do not. Bullies aren't angry. Okay? They may threat-like and be aggressive and all that, but they're not angry people. Peer mediation? No. You put a bully or a person who engages in bully behavior together with a victim and say, okay, you guys just work it out. Yeah, right. What's going to happen? The victim is going to apologize. Like, I'm so, you better not do this to me again. Okay, I'm sorry. I won't. I'll leave you alone. Yes.
What if the bully is confronted by a group of students?
That will make a difference. Lasting effects. They continue on as they get older. There's longitudinal studies that follow kids for over 20 years. And yes, they are 7 times as likely to be involved in the criminal justice system. And they are at a very higher risk, and I don't have the number offhand, of being involved in other high-risk behaviors like drinking and driving and those types of behaviors. And there's a joke, since we're in this beautiful building, that the last one where it says that they find jobs where they can continue their behavior. So people in this bully, juvenile justice, violent community, they go, well, they either are on one side of the bar or the other. Ha ha. That's supposed to be a joke, okay? That there are a lot of people who grow up and they just find jobs where they can continue. Yes, we're joking about lawyers right now. I can think of some politicians, some coaches, things that they can continue that same type of behavior. Oh, I said I was going to take a break. Take a break? Let's take a break. We can stop here for a minute. You guys, let's take a break. Once I get started, I forget that I've got to stop. Got about 6 more slides and we'll watch a video. And then we'll sort of change gears. The informational piece will be complete. So, what does a bully look for in a victim? These are the 2. If you want to understand what a bully looks for, these are it. There ain't no more. Okay? These are the 2 critical areas. One is they are looking for social isolation or loners, somebody who's not going to back them up at all. They're looking for passivity. They're looking for kids who aren't going to fight back or assert themselves. The bottom line, they're looking for the reaction. Now, one of the myth and fact questions were, is bullying caused from having red hair or because I'm heavy? Is that all of those kind of characteristics, is that going to make me a target for bullying? Because I wear glasses? Because I'm in a wheelchair? No, those aren't what causes people to bully. What causes people to bully is if you happen to be heavy and you have a reaction. If you happen to have red hair and it humiliates you. If you happen to be covered from freckles from head to toe and it, whatever. They're looking for the reaction. They may start with the outlying characteristic. That may be a starting point, but as soon as they find out that they don't get what they want, they move on to somebody else. I don't like this slide, but I also don't like to have it into 2 slides either, but we don't have to go over every one. These are just some other additional characteristics to the victim. Victims do have low self-esteem, unlike the people who are engaging in the bully behaviors. They have very few friends, and especially not even one friend. One of my sons is in a power wheelchair, and some of you may remember over a year ago hearing about a disabled boy who had his baritone stolen. Okay. I remember when he first started school, that I knew that he was going to be so different. Cognitively, he is normal. He's in 9th grade at Meade High. He's in honors English and honors math. But when he started school, I knew that he could be a target for bullying. And as a parent, at that first parent and teacher conference, I asked the teacher, and every year since then, not so much now, but who were his friends, so I could start inviting those friends over. Because I wasn't going to wait for Lucas to be invited to somebody else's house, because chances are everybody's so worried about him being in a wheelchair, which they are, and they're worried how, oh gee, do they have to take care of him. So I was really proactive and started inviting his friends over to the house. Best thing I could have done. Best thing that I could say for a parent. And if they have a child that is somewhat isolated, doesn't have a lot of friends, that this is one of the things that I would encourage them to do, is to be the proactive one and help your child invite and learn what it's like to establish and have a friend. They blame themselves. They may be physically weak. When I talk about an isolating situation, you know, if those of you that are involved in schools, you have to look at how that structure is organized. Do the kids that are in the resource room, you know, do they have passing time with the other kids? The kids who are really severe with cerebral palsy, you know, are they kept clean and tidy so that their appearance, so socially, they can sort of fit in? It's really hard to tell parents that have special need kids how important it is to fit in, especially if they are poor or if you have families that just don't care. And yes, I agree, you shouldn't care what a person looks like and what their dress is. I don't want to get into that moral debate, but we do know that if kids come to school fitting in as much as possible, they are less likely to be targets. You know, so dress them as best as what you possibly can. Have their hair as modern as possibly can. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying as far as for the student is in that school environment, it's one of the best things a parent can try to do. And there is a lot of help out there for parents who can't afford to try to help have these kids fit in. And I tell you what, as hard as my day is, that the thought of dressing, you know, my son, getting his braces on, it's like the last thing sometimes, you know, parents want to do is think about that extra energy it takes, but it makes a huge difference on these kids. And
So-
those of you that are involved in special ed, yes.
So how about the schools that have uniforms, required uniforms? Is that something that helps the bullying? I mean,
Oh, they'll find other ways. It's that whole idea of just trying to fit in the most. And it's not just always clothes. Then we can start talking about social skills. And that's why social skill curriculum is real important, and more schools are starting to do it. Okay, there's another kind of victim. They're called provocative victims. Both experts, you know, the ones that I've highlighted in my information today, both agree with the same terminology. They're called provocative victims. These are the kids that bug the heck out of you. These are annoying behavior problem kids. These are the kids that you're thinking to yourself, I'm supposed to be kind and polite, but I just want to knock off and hit them. You know, they're the kids that really get your blood pressure going when you're in the classroom. These are kids that may have letters attached to their names. BD, ADHD, etc. Okay? And these are the kids that really respond to anger management. All right? Because they have a tendency to be hot-headed, hot-tempered, quick to anger. These guys can learn the chill skill, can learn to step back, can learn, you know, those easy intervention skills for their anger. They prolong the conflict even though they're losing, you know. It's like they go, come on, I can take it, you know, you can do it to me. You know, They're the ones that are walking away crying, and the real sort of bully is not. These are very misunderstood people because they are victim-like. These are the ones that try to act like a bully and end up having the low self-esteem that you were talking about. Okay. How does bullying affect kids with learning differences? I sort of framed it, you know, when I talked about a lot of these kids have the letters after their name. But again, people are assuming because of what the behaviors that ADHD cause kids to behave like, that they're many times misunderstood as being the bully, and they're not. Also, kids that are the BD kids, LD kids, ADHD kids have a tendency to be physically weaker and smaller. They're more sensitive. Their social skills are lacking, and you know they just are then a target again for being the victim. Kids with hyperactively impulsive ADHD disorder are even more misunderstood. And it's difficult because just as an average para-ed, or if you're not working, you know, with the kids with these IEPs and all of that, you really don't know. They're in your classroom and you just think they're annoying problem behaviors. And more understanding to learn how to work with their behaviors would be the answer, and that's very difficult for teachers to have to do. Let's answer the rest of these questions while I'm thinking, otherwise I'll space it out again. Okay, let's go. We're going back to this. Thank you guys you're ever so polite, you know, you're just like, okay, I'll roll with it. Okay, number 1, true. Number 2, true, false. 3, true. 4, true. 5, false. They can be very calm and cool. Agitated and aggressive more describes a provocative victim. Fighting back, false. 7 is true. 8, false. 9, false. 10, false. They can be of any size. 11, false. It's a starting point. It is not the reason why they're targeted. 12, you can read it both ways. The answer is false. If I were to add or threat of physical aggression, then it would become true. A lot of bullies threaten more than actually act out. 13, bullies don't need therapy in order to stop bullying. That is true. They need clear guidelines of inappropriate and following through with consequences. We want that behavior to stop. 14, bringing together, no, false. 15, other children should stay removed from the bully-victim conflict or they'll get bullied as well. Okay, we want that to be false. The only time we want bystanders to stay away is if there's a threat of physical harm to themselves. The largest majority that we want to help be a coalition, so to speak, are these bystanders. The bystanders see it, they hear it, they are disengaged. We want to learn how to engage them. And please remind me, yes?
School districts, at least District 81, my school, Rogers, will not allow that. If the kid is watching and they don't leave, they're going to get the same consequences as the kids in the fight.
Yay, yay. And that is happening in more and more places.
So how do they get engaged?
Guilty by association. They get up and they say, knock it off, or they go and report it
See,
to
now, if
somebody
they,
else.
well, they could go report it, but if they got up and said knock it off, they'd be in trouble.
Okay, then they need to go report it.
Yeah.
But I'll show you, okay, go ahead.
Can I go back to number 1? You said bullying is a male behavior?
Oh, okay, sorry, false.
Okay.
I thought, when I looked at that, I thought that boys are exposed to it more than girls. That's how.
Okay.
Yeah.
But girls can be.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's false.
Okay.
Okay, lasting effects. Much different than what is the lasting effects of the bully. These kids do have lower self-esteem, depression, higher rates of suicide, especially in adolescents. If they can make it past 24, they have a tendency to do okay. They're the ones that come back at the 10-year reunion and have the big paying jobs, and maybe the bullies are going, "You want fries with that?" Okay? That the really good part about, the so-called, if you can live through it and be somewhat intact, they have a tendency to be okay as adults. Not all, but just overall. When I say this, it doesn't at all take away the special care and consideration that they need when they're in school. Okay? Don't say, "Oh, they'll be okay." It's that saying, "Oh, it just happens to everybody. We all live through it." Yes?
I just recently read the book Odd Girl Out.
Uh-huh.
And at the very back are several pages of things that parents can do. And the one thing that the authors of the book said is to make your home a sanctuary for your child, the absolute most safe place that they can be, so they can talk about it. They aren't going to be a victim again by saying, "Well, this is your fault," and just don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. I have a handout what parents can say and work with their if they think their child is a victim or being a targeted victim, and I would totally agree with that. And there's different ways to get that. There's lots of stories where parents will say, "Well, how are you doing? Any problems at school?" No, 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 and that's gone on for years, and then they've ended up committing suicide. They really thought they were trying to get their kids to talk, and it is really hard, and it's something that I, as a parent, continually work on. There's a thing that I do at dinner sometime, that it really helps conversation. We'll go around the table and say, what was the best thing about today, and what was the least best thing, or the high point, low point. Any way to try to help engage, in those kind of conversations. Okay, this is what we do know. Those of you that are interested in seeing if the family is the cause, of people who are bullies or engaging in the behaviors, we do have these 3 common denominators from families where kids like this may come from. They have a very harsh, punitive style. They spill the milk and you're grounded for a month, kind of a thing. Okay? Indifference and neglect, especially from the mom. Now, this was a real critical point. I did a workshop for the Title I LAP parent conference a couple of weeks ago at the Doubletree, and there was a whole bunch of parents in there, and after I did the workshop, this stepmother came up and was like so emotional and in tears, and she said, "I get it." She said, "When I showed that slide to her, she said it just became so clear why that stepdaughter was engaging in those behaviors, and how it just was the total light bulb that the birth mom was uninvolved, unemotional, just all of that." And it made sense to her. She was so relieved. She kept thinking it was something that she's doing, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. It was just great. Anyways, and then the other one is permissiveness for aggressive acts. The fact that you let them go around and point guns and shooting, at everybody and all that kind of stuff. Just real permissiveness. So does a family may look like, if from a victim's point of view? Aggression inhibiting. And what we mean by that, I wish you could say assertive inhibiting, but aggression is those natural feelings, bad, sad, glad, mad. Okay, no, we do not show anger in this household. We remain peaceful and quiet. That total inhibiting those natural human emotions as kids develop. And then overly protective. This is what they're finding are the most common denominators. Not to say that there's others and that these are exclusive. And if you look at number 1 and 2, they're completely opposite. You can just have one of these. You don't have to necessarily possess all 3. This is what happens in a school. Now, those of you that haven't been out in a school yet, This is the things that we face every day, unless people have come on in the united front. Notice the whole left side has the word kind of inconsistent woven in and out. Hi, you! I didn't see you come in. She's a fellow peer from the ESD. Are you kind of going all around? Or? Oh, good. Well, welcome.
Nice to see you. Looks like you have a good group.
It's a nice group. Thanks, Delita. Bye-bye. If you ignore the behavior, you're saying yes to it. You're telling the bully it's okay to do, and you're telling the victim it's okay to take it when you ignore it. It's the same thing as making it, saying that, yeah, we let that go on here. For the victim, schools that blame the victims, they want to change the victim and not the bully. They don't take it seriously, and they have that Pollyanna view. That, oh, all of our kids are good. All right, so is there help? Yup. There's a new state law. It's not the magic bullet, but we're going to watch a video. This video is, let's see if I can dazzle you with this next one. Those of you that were here early, we had a sound problem. This is John Stossel from ABC News, and I'm going to stop it. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but you think right when it gets to the good part, I'm going to stop it because he's going to say, well, now we're going to show you what really works. And then I'm going to stop it because he's showing peer mediation between the bullies and the victims, and it doesn't work. Okay? So we'll just see. Okay, VCR. Video. And play. Doesn't look good, does it? Okay, let's do another video.
Does it matter if it's on channel 96?
There's a couple of video ones. Oh, bummer.
Wanted to be in. What kid doesn't want to be popular? What does it mean to be popular? Cool.
Everybody knows who's cool and who's not. And,
Everybody knows. These sixth graders from a school in New Jersey tried to explain what popularity requires.
she's got nice clothes, or she does her makeup right, or he does it for her, athlete or something, and stuff like
So
that.
for girls, makeup, clothes, and boys, it quickly became clear there were differences.
Do it again. Okay. Is it doing it? Yeah. Woo.
The in crowd. We all know what it is. I knew when I was in school, I wanted to be in. What kid doesn't want to be popular? What does it mean to be popular? Cool.
Everybody knows who's cool and who's not, and,
Everybody knows. These sixth graders from a school in New Jersey tried to explain what popularity requires.
she's got nice clothes, or she does her makeup right, or he does it for her, athlete or something, and stuff like
So
that.
for girls, makeup, clothes, and boys, it quickly became clear there were different standards for boys and girls. The girls talked about looks and clothes, but when I asked about boys, they said, ask Zach, he's popular. Are you popular?
Yeah.
Everyone agreed he was popular, so I asked him why. What is it that you need to be popular? Well, psychologist Michael Thompson says he knows what it takes. Thompson's the author of Best Friends, Worst Enemies, and now he makes speeches to parents about friendship and popularity.
How golden is it to be popular? How great is it?
Kids yearn for it.
Power.
These high school kids say popularity is power.
Once you have power, you have everything.
The popular kids have a lot of power over the other kids. What do you mean power? If they say do this, do that. Run and fetch me this, run and fetch me that.
They can pretty much say, do my homework, and the kid will do the homework.
They're like kings. Yes, they are. And you can see them strut their stuff. A number of schools allowed us to talk to the popular kids. We could see how the other kids looked up to them. Which makes me ask, what is it that makes those kids popular? Number one criteria for popularity for a fourth grade girl. Somebody? Thompson lists 3 things that make middle school girls popular. Looks. Looks. Number 2, clothes. Looks and clothes. And third, charisma. Having a personality that attracts.
Well, people tell me that I have a personality that you just can't ignore.
All right, what is the criteria for boys? Number 1, sports. Number 2, athletic ability puts boys in the in crowd. The actual number 2, he says, is stature. Taller, bigger boys have an advantage. And third on the list is humor. Boys who can laugh and make their friends laugh are popular. Kids don't always agree with the shallowness of Thompson's criteria.
Does money matter?
No, that's ridiculous.
Kids go right to money right away, and they're right. The research says that wealthier kids have a better shot at being popularity in all schools. It's so nasty. Well, it is. It is, and luckily we don't get stuck in middle school all of our lives. It is lucky, since at this age, most are in the in crowd or not. And cruelly, much of how they're ranked is determined by birth. What makes you attractive to middle schoolers is pretty biological. Kids understand that.
So it's sort of unfair.
We're all doing what we can to get noticed in the group. Why? Because we know we're getting rank ordered. This is the age when cliques rule, and being excluded by the in crowd hurts. It is a tough world. Psychologist Jeff Parker spent much of his career studying popularity.
Very difficult to hide in middle school. You can't run away and keep a low profile under the radar. Your mistakes are usually the fodder for everyone's discussion.
Chaz, tell me about cool.
I think in order to be cool, you can't think you're cool. I think someone else has to think you're cool.
That's actually cool.
Trying to be cool keeps kids under pressure.
When you try to act cool, you eventually really end up acting stupid.
There's ferocious competition at the top. You may have to be careful who you're seen with.
If I were to go to a movie with like a certain girl in our grade, and I was like seen there, that might...
My what?
Everybody would just be like, what's he doing with her?
It's particularly rugged in middle school because the need to be part of a group is so human. It's so primate. What do you mean primate? We need to be in. And we'll put up with a lot of stuff, the way chimps do. Young male chimps all wrestle and fight and establish a status hierarchy with a top-ranking male chimp. The strongest, the most athletic, yes, same as the most athletic, yes. And female chimps establish a hierarchy. The females don't fight. No. They shun each other. They avoid. It's all done with looks, you know?
Guys like to settle it with fights, like fist fights, you know, girls just tell each other off, get the point across. Guys like to feel powerful, you know. And girls like to make things carry on, like, they like to carry on. They go by together.
More harsh than boys.
Yeah, I think so, because boys are just like, oh, you can't dribble a ball. Girls are like, you're ugly. Girls are just more like just dissing and they hurt. Girls hold grudges forever. Yeah, I mean, they just don't forget anything. Yeah.
Do you have to be really popular to get to be a cheerleader?
No.
I don't know.
Parker spent the day with some junior high cheerleaders.
Some people look at us as snobs, you know, but we're not really snobs.
Why would they think that?
I think, like, they're intimidated by us because sometimes of the way we act, or maybe we don't talk to them, or we ignore them or something.
Popular kids are not always the most liked, well-liked individuals.
Isn't being popular the same as being nice?
No, I can name like 20 people who are popular, but they're not nice.
Some popular kids put other kids down.
Yeah.
Makes them
I
nice.
do. I put people down.
Like what? Put me down.
Put you down? Yeah.
You don't want to.
Oh, come on. I'm tough. I can do it.
You're old. You look like you're like a rat above your mouth or something.
Actually, this feels familiar to me. I remember school as a place where I was looked down on because I was a dork.
I'll get to that later, but next, we look at what the in-crowd sometimes does to the dorks. The fact that there's an in-crowd, of course, means there's also an out-crowd, and that brings us to one of the uglier parts of school days, social cruelty.
All right, guys, let's play a little softball.
Oh man, here we go.
I've got Lewis. This is a clip from a TV show called Freaks and Geeks that was about, well, freaks and geeks.
John, it's me.
The show's creators, Paul Feig and Judd Apatow, based the show on their childhoods.
And being awful at sports, it led to this moment every day in gym class where they would pick teams and you would be standing up against a fence and you'd be told in very clear words that you were awful.
Take me.
It was just a terrible part of the day. Mainly because it happened twice a day, every day for 12 years. It just never went away.
And in every school, says Thompson, about 20% of the kids are on the bottom of the social ladder. And the other kids let them know it.
We don't want to play with you. You're a dork. You're weird. You're terrible. You can't ever be included.
And so their lives, like those of the kids in this show, can be hell.
Now, who's in the bottom 20% of the class? Shy, introverted, often very bright and studious, and the other kids find them sort of odd.
Geeks.
You got it.
I was bullied by girls. I remember coming home crying that girls in the neighborhood were being mean to me, which, you know. So he and Apatow made this TV show. It captured social cruelty well, but maybe too well. Freaks and Geeks was canceled after just one season. Guess we geeks didn't want to be reminded of what it was like.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. There are children too terrified to go to school. Those kids need to be protected.
Thompson says kids can deal with social cruelty if they have a friend. It's those who don't, like this boy you'll meet soon, who Thompson worries about.
The bottom 20% of kids are at risk for not having a friend.
Kids need friends. You see the instinct even in babies.
The moment children can crawl, they crawl and seek out one particular child.
By age 3, they can talk about it.
When I saw Morgan, I walked over to her and I decided to be friends with her.
At this age, of course, their parents are tremendously important.
But around 12, as you begin to separate from your parents, developmentally, and you look to the peer group as kind of your new family, it's very important that you have somebody.
One friend or 5 friends is no best.
No, absolutely not. None is not good. The average elementary school child has 5 friends, but there are some kids who travel with a mob always. And I get real nervous when I talk to parents. If I tell them the average is 5, you can see some moms and they think, oh, my child only has 3 friends and I better help him get more, get him up above average. That's crazy.
I like that.
I'm not worried about a kid who has an A friend. I'm worried about kids who have no friends. Whether you have 1 or 3 or 5 or 10 may depend on your temperament. But it's important that you have at least one.
We'll be right back. Social cruelty can mean name-calling and exclusion, as we've seen, but it also gets worse. In Canada, researchers spent hundreds of hours taping kids in playgrounds. They learned there are a lot of nasty things going on we adults rarely see.
Go back, kid! Go and shake your back, kid!
The boy with the ponytail is the bully here. He controls the kids around him.
Look at the way he stands over others and dominates them.
Psychology professor Wendy Craig did much of this taping. Here the bully's running a game where no one but he knows the rules.
Why do the other kids play with him?
Because they're afraid not to. And he has gained the power in that peer group that this is the person to hang around with.
The kid's desire to belong helps explain this sad scene. This boy is repeatedly bullied. It soon becomes a group event. Others watch as the boys kick. Why do they kick him? Soon 2 boys step on the victim. Others kick him. Michael Thompson says this piling on is common.
21% of kids jump in and imitate the bully.
Why do they do that?
If you see somebody's being very aggressive, you'd rather be like them than like the victim. To identify with the victim makes you feel kind of weak. To identify with the aggressor makes you feel strong.
Even the victims are drawn to the aggressors. They almost never run away.
He keeps coming back because no attention is worse than this type of attention. If he wants to belong, he has to take it.
Dr. Craig says some victims will later tell adults the bully is their friend. The researchers saw an episode of bullying on the playground roughly every 8 minutes. And girls were as likely to bully as boys.
But this episode shows how clever girls are. They start to take her by her neck and walk around the playground, but they keep moving. So it's hard for an adult to identify that something's going on. They make her kiss the tree.
Later, a girl tells her,
And the girl doesn't run away. It's almost as if she thinks she deserves it.
And that's the problem. Sometimes children who are victimized believe that they do deserve it, and so they take it.
And this girl would call these other girls her friend?
Yes.
Here, one of her friends invites others to join in hurting her. The boy comes in to punch her while another kicks her from behind.
An adult walks right by.
The adult has no idea what kind of intimidation is going on.
We seldom do, says Craig. And it's tough to know what's intimidation versus horseplay. Kids do a lot of shoving and trash talking, and many really are just having fun.
You don't want to suffocate the kids, but you want to protect the real victim. It sounds like it's an impossible job.
It's very tough, which is why I don't jump in and blame teachers.
When Dr. Craig asked teachers, how often do you intervene in bullying? Most said, all the time. But on the tapes, the researchers saw teachers intervene less than 5% of the time.
We rarely see it. We don't intervene and we don't hear it. But kids hear it and see it and are a part of it and inadvertently support it.
Never did I have fellow classmates try and stop me from bullying someone. Usually they would actually join in.
These former bullies and victims of bullies agreed to talk to us about their experience. Michael said he became a bully because he wanted to stand out.
I wasn't very popular. I figured push people around, get people to see what I'm doing. That'll get my name out there. That'll get people to notice me.
And did it?
Yes, it did. People would recognize me in the hall, not just walk past me and see some kid that might get picked on.
Bullying often works.
Right there.
Some bullies become outcasts, but many are popular.
Bully boys are more highly regarded than victimized kids. So you can raise your stock. Even though the girls will say he's mean, stuff like that, they will rate you more highly.
Because the power makes you popular.
It's an aphrodisiac.
I seemed cool, I got attention, I was popular.
Jacob demonstrated how he used his 6'3" frame to intimidate.
Do I have to push you? Give me your money.
I don't want to.
Why not?
It's
I'm
my
gonna
money.
beat you.
He and the others say they no longer bully people, but they like showing off what they used to do.
Like, how much you weigh, small fry, huh? What do you weigh? 155. I'm gonna pick you up and just break you over my legs, scrawny boy.
Don't be looking at me. You better keep it moving before I punch you in your face.
Girls are less likely to bully physically, but they do it too.
It was fun to me to see people cry.
Why?
It was just in my nature just to see people cry. I don't know why.
They have like fists up like this, getting ready, like they gonna smack you or something.
Shatia's been picked on repeatedly.
Why do you get bullied?
Because I always cry all the time.
You think if you cry that makes them do more to you?
Yeah, of course. You know, they act like that's what they want. You know, they want to have some entertainment.
Is that right? Crying would make it more fun to bully somebody?
Yeah, it's a goal.
I used to continue doing it for the simple fact that they used to cry.
You didn't feel sorry for them?
No. If you didn't have the nerves to respond to my attitude towards you, no, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't have no pity.
School can be a tough place, and it's easy to see how tough when even the reformed bullies describe what they used to do with such obvious pride.
I made someone bulimic because I was very continuous about that they were fat and stuff.
How'd you make her bulimic?
You're fat, you're disgusting,
How much do you weigh? Like 4 tons? Like, just on and on.
Made her binge and throw up.
Daily.
So you were making life miserable for lots of kids.
Yeah.
And did you care?
No.
And his school didn't do anything about it.
And they never told your parents?
No. Kids will be kids.
Sometimes adults rationalize bullying as well as kids, when in fact it's traumatic. Those kids need to be protected.
Kids like this boy who was taped by Dr. Craig.
This is a playground that's filled with 150 children, and yet here we see this little boy walking around alone. No friends, no one to play with.
He has a small toy in his hand. One boy finally comes up to him, but only to take his toy. He then throws the toy away. Then another child intentionally smashes into him. He goes to get his toy, and then the child who smashed into him grabs him by the neck.
Life has to be hell for this kid who's constantly picked on.
Absolutely. For them, recess is the most terrifying moment of their day. And they would rip her skirts, they would rip her clothes, they would rip her jewelry off her neck.
They even got to the point where they threatened to break her legs.
Donna and Larry Guerra's daughter Kirby was bullied at this middle school in Colorado Springs, bullied by the popular kids.
All the kids that harassed her were named the populars, and they could just get away with anything they wanted. It's mostly the popular people that bully.
They can get away with a lot of stuff because everybody else wants to be friends with whoever's popular.
This isn't unusual. The researchers say popular kids often get away with more, with students and teachers. That made life hell for Kirby and her friends.
Both of us were kicked and smacked around. And I was shoved in the lockers, kicked. If you even looked at them the wrong way, they would say, we'll hurt you, we'll kill you, you're not worth anything.
The kids and their parents complained about it.
And we would go into the principal's office, and sometimes he wouldn't come see us, other times he would see us and he would tell us to get a backbone and toughen up and stuff like that. And it doesn't help, it really doesn't help.
Kirby eventually went to her parents' medicine cabinet and took pills from every bottle she could find. Then she wrote this note to them.
I know my dad will shock you, but I had to do it. All my life I have been teased, harassed, and pushed around. I just couldn't stand it anymore. I love you all very much, and I will see you again someday. I'm sorry to do this to you and disappoint you once more, but I just can't go on living because there's no place in the world for someone like me. I'm an outcast in school.
Amazingly, taking all the pills didn't kill Kirby. Her parents took her to a counselor. But the bullying continued, and 3 months later, Kirby killed herself with a rifle.
I'm angry at the principal and at that school for not giving my daughter the support she needed. I don't understand why they didn't want to help a child that was in so much pain, and why they would just ignore the fact that she was being harassed as bad as she was.
The school refused to be interviewed about what happened. They say they're worried about being sued. They also claim they're trying to decrease bullying. However, there is good news. Some schools have found ways to...
Okay, hang on now. You want the mic? Yes, please. Just turn off the center one, Jerry, please.
That's the one that's on. It's the only one that's on.
Oh, then. Yeah, that one, then the back one. Yeah. Okay. One word comment, just one word. Painful.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Shocking.
Shocking.
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. Naive. Guilty.
Sad.
Sad.
Tragic.
Tragic.
I was going to say sad.
Sad, you can say it again.
Truthful.
Truthful. Sickening. Sad. Shocked. Preventative.
Guilty.
Guilty.
Anger.
Anger.
What do we do next?
Right here. One word. Back here. Realistic. Empathetic. Jerry didn't see it.
Empathy.
Empathy.
No reason.
No reason, any? Painful, let's write. Actual?
Angry.
Angry, sad. Okay. So, since the mid-1990s, all schools have been liable for lawsuits regarding bullying under federal law. And what that means is that there was a case in Wisconsin where this boy was consistently teased and taunted for being gay so bad he changed school districts. It happened again, and the principal was on national TV saying if he just wouldn't act so gay. And they ended up filing the lawsuit against the school district, and they won on the basis that he was being teased so much that it was denying him a right to have an education. Okay. Okay, now, tell me what I'm doing wrong. What it is, it's a basis for a voice. It provides a legal voice for families, and for schools, in the most extreme cases to do something. We are on slide number 25. And what the law says is that by August 1st, each school district in the state of Washington, they have to adopt or amend a policy and procedure regarding bullying. Now they use HIB, harassment, intimidation, bullying. The reason why they use all three and lump them together, because when it comes down to, and I'm not a legal person, when it comes down to the legal side of it, it doesn't make any difference what word it is. It is all considered the same. So their argument is that in order to bully, you have to harass, in order to bully, you have to intimidate. So they're lumping it into one. Now, this is their recommendation. School districts can do whatever they want. They can separate the definitions, or they can leave it all as one. But we have to define what it is. And on the slide, then 26, the state's definition is any intentional, written, verbal, or physical act. And the word intentional I have bold and underlined. And that's there to protect the victim. And what that word means is if I were to go up to Annie and go, man, your hair looks awful, or, whatever it is I'm going to say, she's going to say, hey, don't say that, that hurt me. What do I say next? Oh, I didn't mean it. I was just kidding. The fact that I said it, it was intentional. The fact that I wrote that note was intentional. I can no longer say, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean it. Okay, it takes that step out. I don't know if we have to reboot. I don't know, but you're welcome. The person says, well, I was just kidding. Right, that's the first thing they'll say. My kids will say it. My one son more than the other. Okay? All right, then on number 27. Okay, so stick with me. Stick with me. Okay, we're on 26, and then I have that. So any written, verbal, physical thing, that, and then on slide 27, that physically harms a student or damages their property, substantially interferes with their education, is so severe, persistent, or pervasive that it is a threatening educational environment, or 4, if it's going to substantially disrupt the orderly operation of the school. Only one of those 4 need to be present in order for a lawsuit to be, that you would have legal grounds to start some kind of proceedings? Yes.
I'm just curious, like when it's psychological abuse, you know, like the verbal abuse and what we saw the girls do a lot, do they just put that under the interfering with their education because if they're psychologically hurt?
If they're so psychologically hurt that they don't want to come to school, that they can't concentrate.
But so that's where they would put it. Like say there's an incident where the two kids are never physically touching each other because it says physically harms a student. So it would have to go into the second one, right?
Right.
But that's how you could help
And
them.
it could be intimidating or threatening educational environment too.
Okay.
See, now if you go back to slide 26, where it says slur, rumor, joke, innuendos, you know, drawing, cartoons, pranks, gestures, other written, verbal, or physical. It's not an exhaustive list.
Right.
Okay. Let's do, the only thing that I can think of is let's shut this down and then let's restart it from the beginning. It's, I'm not used to being videotaped, so.
Sorry.
It uses the word encourage, all right? Obviously, it's not mandate. You are mandated under federal law to report any signs of child abuse or neglect. All right, you are not mandated in the state of Washington under this law. You are encouraged.
You are
to
morally
report.
obligated as an
You can
educator.
say that you're morally obligated. And there are some districts, though, that are making it mandatory. And that is up to each district. But as far as the state's concern is that they are just encouraged. And again, when you look at a state legislation, woo-hoo, we got it. When you look at a state legislation, you know, they kind of do what's minimal.
I think they were trying to protect educators with that word.
Well, yeah,
That's my
and
guess.
let me tell you where educators are really. Okay, so here we go. Encourage a school employee who has witnessed or has reliable information. In other words, you don't have to see it to report it. And what we mean by reliable is, I did a workshop up in Kettle Falls, which those of you that don't know, it's just right on the northern end of Stevens and southern end of Ferry County. And they gave me an example. This one lady bus driver had been driving for years and years, and she noticed one day that there was some kind of a, event happening in the back of her bus. And what she did is after everybody got off the bus, this one girl came and said to her that she thought that the hubbub was that there was somebody that had a weapon in their backpack. Well, that's reliable information. But, so what she did is she reported that to the supervisor. The supervisor then went to the principal, and then they did their follow-up. And then what's the but after that?
I'm just wondering if most principals would say, well, you didn't really actually see it if you believe the kid.
They could, but the thing is the fact that this is now in place, it is requiring what was known as best practices that, to really, step up to the plate, so to speak. And I will tell you that I'm very impressed with the amount of school districts that are really trying to make this a living document and not just something that, they write and then throw on the shelves to collect dust. Okay, so they're encouraging you to report. If you report, there is no retaliation. And then this is the big catch. This is the biggest thing, those of you that are going to be working in the state of Washington. That is, if you do choose to report, okay, if you choose to report promptly and in compliance with whatever is your district's policy and procedure, you will be immune from cause of action. You will not be held liable. You cannot be personally sued. Okay? From a cause of action for damages arising from any failure to remedy the reported incident. Okay. In other words, if you saw it, try to intervene and then report. If you have reliable information, then report. Even if you try to intervene and it doesn't work, you are held immune. You see a kid kicking a kid like out in that playground. Let's say that kid that's being kicked around has a broken leg. If you try to say, knock it off, and you report it, even though that kid ended up having an injury, you would be immune. You would not be held liable. You don't have to remedy it. You need to try if possible, and then report it. Yes?
We probably all know this, but it's something I learned just because I'm brand new. Don't just tell the principal. Make sure you document that you told them, or that if they have a discipline form, that you filled a discipline form, and that you keep a copy. Because
yeah, and that's one of the things when I go around to schools, I have different examples. Okay, so now what? What can you guys do? Those of you that are in and around schools individually, just try to intervene. Try to do whatever it takes to stop it. Just don't walk by with it. And the biggest key to any kind of a successful change is that everybody comes on board with it. And if your principal is not on board, you will not get a united front. And that's usually the folks that I love to deal with, you know, because we want to get those folks on board. And I think we'll do another activity. These are 10 steps that I promote to schools kind of to follow in order if they want to see a united front and a change happen in their schools. And what I mean by a change, that would be 50% decrease in reported incidences. It would be less expulsions. It would just, you know, there's all sorts of hard numbers when you follow this step. It's pretty much follows bulletproofing your schools, the Obeya stuff, Quit It. There's a whole bunch of different places that have formulas. The first one is United Front. You build your knowledge through what we're doing here. You define what violence is appropriate and not. For example, I'll use Onion Creek School District. Little Onion Creek School District is one of my favorite school districts in northern Stevens County. K through 8 school, 50 kids. 5 teachers. 2 teachers have been there over 25 years. 1 teacher has been there 24 years. 2 teachers were alums of the 8th grade, left, came back, went to college, and now are teaching there. Okay? And so it is a really unique place. What they did is they took this blue sheet and they tried to figure out what would be appropriate or inappropriate for their school. What would they allow? They first did not like mild, moderate, severe. They changed the words to moderate, severe, extreme. And since they're a K-8 school, there's some of these things that they didn't even want to mention. You know, that they thought they were a little too graphic, maybe more appropriate if it was a K-12 school. And then what they did is they made a list of behaviors that they felt were moderate, and they took it from this list, severe, and then what would be an extreme list. And then they build their discipline system based on frequency and severity, which is one of the things that I recommend for schools to do. And many schools can adapt their current discipline ladders to have it fit in with this. I just went up to Kettle Falls, and Mom drove up with me the other day, and that they can take their discipline system and really kind of weave it into this nicely. Create rules and consequences, a way of coordinating incidences. And who was it that mentioned the, keeping a record? What happens so much is if it happens on the playground, we've got to give those people on the playground a as far as 1 hour per week for 12 weeks, you'd have to jettison something out to include that additional hour in. I mean, it's not a huge, curriculum thing. Promote it to the students, parents, and community. Implement support groups, which is one of the things I really recommend, and I'll give some more examples of later for the people that are in the counseling field. And get the kids involved, and then schedule what I say a B-day. Like from this day forward, this school as a united front will no longer tolerate blah, blah, blah. You know, and that it will be a systematic change, and it won't happen overnight. We're not going to get it the first time. And what happens is the very first thing that when this starts at school, the bus drivers need to be pre-warned, because what happens on their buses will increase substantially as a result of, if we stop it at school, the kids have got to still get their fixes, and their next step is on the school bus. So we really, really include everyone involved in that. So, if you're a student or a parent, these are some of the do's. All right? And one of the do's is this one. You try to make it clear to that kid. Don't just say, oh, honey, it's all right. Don't worry about it. You need to reinforce to that kid that it's not them, it's their reaction that is important to that bully. You know, don't just pass it over. You know, it's very serious to these kids. Brainstorm strategies and practice them. I did that with my son Lucas, the boy that's in the wheelchair. He hated his early elementary years. He hated the start of school. It made him sick, made him nauseated. He was so afraid. Why? All the kids were staring at him. They were coming up and saying, what's wrong with you? What happened to you? He didn't want to have to answer anybody, and he shouldn't have to answer anybody. And it was the same thing almost up until 3rd grade. What did I do? I said, let's practice comebacks. I was shooting from the hip. I'm glad to see that what I was doing is what they're recommending. And I said, well, let's practice some comebacks, Luke. You know, so when they say, what's wrong with you? What could you say back? Well, then we practice, nothing's wrong with me, what's wrong with you? You know, for him to respond like that. I also then went in and told the teachers, and then had an opportunity to talk with the teachers about his birth condition or with the classroom, and they asked me questions without Lucas there. Asked Lucas if that was okay. He liked that idea a lot. You know, so you just can brainstorm things. The next one is to teach the younger kids of what works with bears. Okay? So what do you do if you encounter a bear? What don't you do when you encounter a bear? Let's start there. You don't run. You don't play dead. What you do when you encounter a bear is you try to make yourself look as big as you can, look him in the eye, low voice, you know, don't do that to me, I don't like it, and then you can slowly back away. That's exactly what a kid can do with a bully. Stand up, make themselves look bigger. Look them in the eye and say, I don't like that. Don't do that to me, and then get out of there. Okay. Then, this is for older kids. This is the ha-ha so. And there's no order, even though it's ha-ha so, because you can't just mix around those letters and really get cool words, you know. So it's ha-ha so. And the H is to just ask for help. Then the A is to assert yourself. And I have a little Oli and Lena joke. Oli and Lena from northern Minnesota. Mom's hearing all this stuff. She's going, do you want to go up with that? Okay, there's books on Oli and Lena jokes, you know. All right. So Oli and Lena are going to assertiveness training. And before they start assertiveness training, when they talk to each other, they look at each other's shoes while they talk to each other. No, they look at their own shoes as they talk to each other. And by the time they finish assertiveness training, now they can look at each other's shoes and talk to each other. Now, assertiveness doesn't mean aggressive, it does mean assertiveness. And it is hard to teach kids to become assertive. And if we can practice with them in groups, at school, practice with them as parents. Humor. Huge, huge benefit to teach a kid that. Hey man, your ears are so big. And the kid could say, yeah? Boy, you should see my mom's ears. If you can diffuse your feet, man, they look like, man, they're huge. Yeah, they come in handy when I go water skiing. You know, to just sort of turn it around and diffuse it. It's just huge. They don't get their fix, they don't get their reaction, they'll move on to somebody else. You may have to do it a few times, you know, but again, they're looking for that reaction. Walk away or avoid it, but that's really hard to do. If you have to go to class A to class B, you've got to go down that hallway. You know, how else are you going to get there? So that one doesn't always work. By the way, this is like a recipe. You don't have, well, it's not like a recipe. It's unlike a recipe, let's put it that way, because you can pick and choose. Self-talk. It's not me, it's my reaction. It's not me, it's my reaction. It's not me, it's my reaction. And all that other positive self-talk stuff. And then own it. Yeah? So, Bill Cosby wrote a book about the most powerful book in the child's language. I don't know if that's the exact name. Anybody know what I'm talking about? The most powerful word in a child's language is the word so. Well, you're such an idiot, man. You know, what a loser. So, just own it. You got big ears, so. These are some of the techniques and some of the skills now that are coming out. I don't want to do this. I'm going to do an activity. Do you know what I mean by intervening? Intervening, kind of, you know, like you're just going to try to stop something from happening. Even if you're